In this video, we are going to be going through the process of how I would make a larger, more in-depth, or advanced material by combining multiple materials and building them up upon one another. It is quite a simple material, but although the nodes I'm using are going to be used multiple times, it can become quite daunting for newer users of Medulr to manage and work with larger material graphs. The material will mainly be using blend nodes by combining materials to build up multiple layers for our grass texture. So to start off, I've already set up a base material using a set of stone resources. I am editing the parameters of the color resource for the stone texture to change how the stone looks to give it a more dirt-like feel, so that I can then use it for a ground base in the material. Now that the base for our ground is looking good, let's start working on the grass itself. Once again, I'll be using a diffuse material for my grass, as I'm trying to keep my material graph as simple and organised as possible. And no matter what stage in the material we are at, we need to be making sure that we delete any of our unwanted nodes which we have left over within the graph. I've dragged in a blend for the two materials so that we are able to get the effects of both. To achieve our blend, we can either set the blend weight value manually or to use the texture for the blend. At this stage of the material though, if I set the blend weight manually, it'll give me an even distribution of grass across the material, which isn't the look that I'm after. So what I've decided to do is bring in a new texture which we'll be using as the blend weight so that we can get an uneven distribution across our material. So as our texture is still quite bare in the way of grass, we are going to be bringing in a second grass texture with a much lighter shade and a different pattern. The reason that I'm doing this instead of just using the same grass texture but editing it the same way I did the stone is so that it gives us more variation in our overall grass texture. After we have set up our diffuse material for the new texture, we again want to bring in a blend material. But instead of connecting our base material up to it, we are going to use our previous blend and the blend of the lighter grass material. This time though, we are going to be using a 0.1 blend weight to get an even amount of grass across the whole material. Then we can update our root so that the new blend is what we are able to see in the material viewer. To further build up on our material, we are bringing in another texture which is in between both of our previous grass textures in terms of its color. So now I'm bringing in another blend, but I'm swapping which is the base material and which is the blend for this material. The reason why I'm swapping which is the main and which is the blend like this is that it allows us to use the same texture resource for a blend more than once without having to change the texture's parameters. We are bringing in a new texture to use as the blend weight this time though. This gives us a blend that looks completely different to our previous blend weight texture, while also providing us with a texture that we are able to use at a different stage in the material if we wish to. After checking that our root is once again updated, we are able to see that the material has become a lot more grassy due to the blends thus far, while retaining each of the previous material's attributes. But here's where things can start to get a bit more complicated. Even though we are bringing in another blend and have primarily used blends in the creation of this material, we are going to use our ground material from the start of the graph and connecting it to a blend node along with the current stage of the overall material. This can make our graph a bit more difficult to understand as we have multiple connections coming from the same material nodes. And one thing that we need to make sure of while working with larger graphs is that we take advantage of the auto layout feature within Medulr by pressing the L on your keyboard, as well as making sure that our root node is set correctly at all times. So now that we have been able to maintain the variation in the grass and adding in more dirt beneath it, let's continue building up on the material. By bringing in a new blend, we are connecting our current root node to the new blend, as well as the original dark looking grass texture that we used at the start of the material. This once again is making our graph more complex with its connections, but it is allowing us to keep a minimal amount of nodes within the graph and keeping it more clean. And now let's connect our metal roughness map that we had brought in earlier to use as a blend weight to this new blend material node. After setting up this blend, we have lost the majority of the dirt layer that was originally in our material. So let's bring it back closer to the surface. For our next blend, we are once again connecting our base dirt material and then blending the current stage of the material into it. This time we are using a 0.4 blend weight, and this gives us the great effect of having a patch of grass that has both quite healthy grass, as well as some grass that looks quite a bit drier and has a more yellow tinge to it. Our grass material is starting to take shape now, although it might need a bit of watering. We can still build up on the material some more though, as a somewhat dry lawn wasn't the look I was after. So to give our lawn a bit more life to it, we are creating a new diffuse using our dark grass texture as a new material. This allows us to make edits to the material like we did with the stone texture at the beginning. And using our new grass material, we will use another blend and bring in a texture to use as our blend weight. However, with having so many blends and using the same textures for the blends, even with varying which material is the base and which is the blend, the effects can give us an overlapping effect. To get rid of this effect, I'm going through and editing the rotations of our blend textures. Even though we are using the same textures, as long as we have it connected using different function nodes, we can make each one have individual rotation values, which is there adding more variation to the way that our blends are interacting with each other. Another way you can achieve this varying effect is by using a multitude of materials, each with varying texture resources, but this wouldn't be going with the minimalistic style of the graph. And finally, to finish off our material, we want to be bringing our dirt layer back to the surface so that the grass falls off at points and we can see the ground beneath. I'm achieving this by using 2 more blend nodes. With attaching the light grass to the final blend just to make the dirt more a part of the ground, but by not having it be too drastic of a change. There were other points along the creation of this material in which I could have finished with it, as the material did have decent results at points. But that's part of using Medulr. You can create things that you didn't even realize you were going to create, or push past it until you get your ideal results. I primarily used blends to create this material, but there are many other materials in Medulr that can aid you with your creations. So try experimenting in Medulr. I'm sure you'll be surprised at the results you can achieve.